stay safe. Thoughts find out, and every conversation explores to the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book, The Unfair Advantage, Weaponizing the Helpmanic Thought Toolbox. No other than Mr. Todd Hagopian. Welcome, Mr. Todd. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I may?
Sure. Thank you, sir. My name is Todd Hagopian. I am a turnaround executive, so I take small businesses or large businesses and I come in and turn them around. And I am obviously, as Daniel said, I am an author, and I have written a book about some transformation strategies that are influenced by me having bipolar. So these are bipolar inspired business transformation strategies. And the idea is that we all read the same 20 books, but in order to get breakthrough results, you do have to use differentiated thinking. And so this book is full of different frameworks that people don't use and are brand new to the business transformation landscape and really help you deliver results above and beyond your peers.
Go beyond your peace. And thank you again, Mr. Todd, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you. So today let's talk about from handcuff to a $2 million. How you weaponize a bipolar disorder into a business superpower. So tell us, weaponizing a disorder. Can you describe a pivotal moment when you perception of your bipolar disorder shifted from being debilitating condition to potential source of unique strength?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I went 15 years undiagnosed, and I had a lot of ups, and then I had some very big downs, which is where the handcuffs come in. And so when you're bipolar, you get hypomanic, which is the upswing, where you have hyper focus and grandiose goal setting, and you can very goal directed activity, really good things in business. But then you have the bipolar depression. That is the exact opposite. You can barely get out of bed, through suicidal thoughts and this kind of thing. When I finally got diagnosed, they essentially told me about these two sides and started to inform me of what I had been dealing with for 15 years. And you hear what you want to hear. So at first I heard the hypomanic part and I thought, man, this is great. No wonder I can work 22 hours a day and I only sleep 2 days a week or 2 hours a day, for the last 15 years, and all this is great. And so I decided to try and do it without the medicine, and that did not work. So I think the moment that you're asking about is when I started to take the medicine, and everything kind of came back to neutral, and I actually felt good, and I was sleeping better. And the only problem is that the hypomania disappeared completely. And so I completely lost my business edge that I had been known for 15 years. And so, right at that time, I had to really decide whether I wanted success or sanity. And I didn't think that was fair. So, what I did was I started to systematize the different methodologies that I had used when I was hypomanic and tried to figure out how I could mimic that in a normal state where I was medicated and healthy and present. And that is when it really clicked that some of this great stuff from the disorder could actually be systematized and used when I was healthy and could actually eventually realize could be used by anybody else because they're just systems and their methodologies. So that's how this book came about is 8 years later now. I have come up with this toolbox of tools that are bipolar inspired, but you don't need to have bipolar to use them. They're systematized methodologies that take advantage of hypomanic traits that anybody can put in place.
Mr. Todd, the journey from handcuff, a powerful metaphor for being restrained by your condition to a $2 million business is outstanding. What is the first concrete step you took to turn a period of struggle into a strategic plan?
Yeah. So first of all, you have to take a step back and realize like at some point you need to get a hold of the problem, right? So after I had tried to go without medicine, realized that wasn't going to work, I really had to dig deep and say, am I going to make a lifelong decision to fix this? So I did that. I quit drinking and I started taking the medicine. I started trying to sleep more, and really a lot of self-care went into that. Once I realized I lost my edge, it was then a matter of, okay, how can I take this first step to getting back what I had while staying healthy? And so it came about that I just started using a couple of different strategies, really starting to think back to what I had done, what had made me so successful in the past, and trying to dig deep and understand exactly what that looked like and why I was able to do those things, and could I put systems in place around it. And that was the first step. The first turnaround that I did after the disorder had been diagnosed. I might only use two of the frameworks, and they worked real well, turned around the business. The second turnaround, I used two more frameworks and they worked real well. Third turnaround, I used a couple more. And then in the 13th month, I looked back and I said, oh man, I should have done that one from the first turnaround. I just didn't even think about that. And that was the moment where I was like, you know what? I need to get these all down on paper. I need to come up with a toolbox and I need to implement all of them every time. By the time I got to the fourth turnaround, things went real fast, real breakthrough, real fast. And I just realized I finally had something here.
Interesting, Mr. Todd. So, bipolar disorder is often characterized by cycle of depression and mania. How do you learn to channel the intense energy and system of a hypomanic state productively and rather than destructively?
Sure. Yeah. So, interestingly, when I first got diagnosed, the medicines that were on the market treated both. So they kind of just doled you out. You didn't have the highs, you didn't have the lows. Medicine has gotten better in the last few years. Now they have some that actually only attack the lows. And then you have others that can attack the highs as well if those become an issue. My highs, my hypomanic periods never really were an issue. They were actually usually pretty good. The lows is where I really got myself into trouble. And so we managed to move medicines, and you always have some give and take and trying to figure out what works best. But now I am basically only on the ones that stop the low, and then I have some that I can take as needed to cut down on the hypomanic if I start to feel myself spiraling out of control. So it's really about being present, and really one of the cool things that I like to talk about is I went 15 years undiagnosed. Then I went 8 years where I didn't tell anybody except for a handful of people that knew. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, I'm out here on podcasts talking about it. I've written a book about it. Now everybody knows. It is a lot easier once it's not hidden to have people help you out and make sure to take a pulse check here and there, make sure to check in on you, make sure you're feeling good, and that has actually made a world of difference. Those 8 years between being diagnosed and actually letting people know what was going on, that was pretty tough because you're always basically hiding a significant portion of yourself. And now it's a lot easier now that I'm talking about it.
Mr. Dodd, conversely, what tools did you develop to ensure that the depressive cycle did not derail the business you were building? And how do you manage the manager during those times?
Yep, yep. So for me, it was really about getting more sleep when I was actually sick, or while I am sick. It's about getting more sleep, and that keeps me away from the depressive cycles. Now, the interesting part of what you just asked is how do I manage it, for my employees and for myself now that I am healthy. And you still have to be careful, right? All these methodologies I've come up with are very extreme. They're very focused. You work very hard to implement them. So I have built-in routines where there's sprint and breaks into these methodologies, and they're specifically designed to avoid burnout. And so you are hyper focused on the things that are the most important, and you are working extremely hard, but there's also breaks built in, and safeguards built in so that the same people on your team are not doing all of the work. And that's extremely important. And I actually was able to teach myself that as I was making sure to put in the proper amount of self care for myself. And sometimes it's important to remember that your employees need that as well.
Mr. Todd, many people see mental health condition as something to be medicated and managed into submission. Your story suggests integration. How do you balance clinical management with harnessing the unique traits of your brain?
Yep. Well, I will say, um, medication's not for everybody. I don't talk for everybody when I say that. I did need medication. Some people can get away without it. What I will say is that diversity in the workplace is really interesting because most of us now know how to deal with LGBTQ and race and religion. We might not be good at it. There might be people who are intentionally bad at it, but most of us know how to deal with it, right? One area of diversity that people are not trained on is neurodivergence, which is mental illness. And for example, I always tell this story when somebody comes out and they get on stage and they announce, maybe that they're LGBTQ and here's my struggle and this and that, and nobody knew. Like it's often celebrated and people get amazing feedback afterwards and a lot of support. When you come out as bipolar or ADHD or OCD, oftentimes the reaction is much different. It's about trying to fix you, like you said. So, how can we fix you? And what I want this book to be about is to make sure people realize that neurodivergence is not something that needs to be fixed. It's something that needs to be celebrated. So, people are like, oh, I didn't even know you were struggling with that. I'm so sorry I couldn't help you. How do we fix you? And I'm like, no, no, no. The last four turnarounds would not have happened if it wasn't for the neurodivergence. The turnarounds came from the good parts of the disorder. So, what we need to do now is manage the bad parts of the disorder and learn to take advantage of the good parts of the disorder. And more importantly than just letting me be myself and driving the good parts, maybe you should learn from what I do during the good parts and implement that throughout the business. And that's what this book is about, is that there are actually things you can learn from neurodivergence that you could actually take away and do yourself intentionally and systematize it so that you can actually act in hypomanic fashion and lead in hypomanic fashion without actually having the disorder.
Mr. Todd, what the specific aspects of bipolar thinking do you consider your business superpowers? Is it the hyper creativity, the intense focus, the ability to see patterns, other mess, or something else?
Yeah, so all of those are covered by the toolbox, but I think the biggest three are grandiose goal setting. So bipolar is known for these grandiose thinking, and what I tell people is, if you promise 6%, if you do the old under promise over deliver, you promise 6 and you get 8, and I promise 25 and I get 19. I'm going to get the promotion every time. Okay, I've promoted hundreds of people in my life. That's who wins. It's the person who shoots for it, and maybe they miss, but they get twice as much growth as the other guy. So, grandiose goal setting and getting your team to believe in these grandiose goals is extremely important. Hyper focus, for sure. The Karelin method of extreme productivity is all about taking your calendar and making sure that every hour is focused directly on the 20% of things that drive 80% of your results. So it's 80/20, but to an extreme where you really are taking your entire calendar and making sure you're making as much money as you can every minute of the day. And your calendar doesn't lie. Think about the 5 things that make you the most money. Your calendar is going to be filled with the other 95 things that don't. You need to take all those out and put your entire calendar down, focused purely on the things that make you money. And then the last thing, to your point, is creativity. Is the orthodoxy smashing innovation. We talk about orthodoxies in every industry. There's certain things that everybody believes is true. What we do is orthodoxy smashing. You take that orthodoxy that people believe is true and you say, what if it wasn't? If that was not true, what would you do in this market, and you play all those out, and eventually you're going to run into a couple that make a lot of sense, and you're going to say, wow, that might not be true, and what if we did this, and how is that going to work? And there is no easier way to make money than to smash an orthodoxy in a boring business and do something differently than they've done for the last 50 years. It's the easiest way to make money in business.
Your stories challenges the very definition of a normal in leadership, Mr. Todd. Do you believe the hyper-structured, always consistent CEO model is outdated? And are we moving toward the era that values diverse cognitive styles?
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I think we all read the exact same books, all these leadership books. Like when I was pitching this book to publishers, right, it didn't fit the mold. People want the same exact thing, these whitewashed, consultant based, feel good methodologies of democracy in the workplace and work life balance and treating customers, that like they're always right and this and that. This book is about doing things very, very differently, thinking about things differently, and executing differently. And in the future, you've got 2,000 companies that are all acting the exact same. Think about the companies that have broken free, the Teslas and the Apples and you know, these companies that have broken free, broken the mold, Ubers and um, you know, what they've done is they've taken an old industry and they've done things completely differently. They've thought about it differently. They smashed these orthodoxies. They set huge goals, and then they hyper focused on one or two things and got really, really good at them instead of trying to be everything to everybody and trying to make all the customers happy and trying to keep all the employees happy and adding employee fits, and what you really need to do is get down to what customers do you want to serve, what products do you want to produce, what type of employee do you want to have, and then get laser focused in on that and build your business that way. And that's how these breakthrough companies have developed. And as more and more businesses get out there, and as different companies start having this breakthrough type thinking in the industries, you're going to find that this sanitized, whitewash, consultant based leadership is really going to fall behind, and they're going to start falling out of that Fortune 500.
Beyond profit, what is the core mission of your business? Has your live experience with extreme states of being shape the company's purpose in profound way, Mr. Todd?
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, beyond profit, I think if you talk to my employees and past employees, I think what you'll feel and hear is that people are incredibly attached to the goals of the organization. They feel like they matter. We have something that we call the 9 box of goals, and it's organic growth, profit growth, and innovation. 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year. So you'll have 9 total boxes on this thing. And we have a raise your hand rule. And the rule is that if you're ever asked to do something that's not one of these 9 goals, you raise your hand, and your boss has to explain to you why you're doing it. And there will be times you just have to do it, right? There are things come up and we have to get them done. But most of the time, the boss will either explain to you why you're doing it, why it's important to the company, or they'll realize it's not and they'll assign you to something different. What I always tell people is people don't get mad because they had to work an extra hour that week. They get mad because they wasted 2 hours during the day on nonsense and then they had to work an extra hour, right? Because there was so much waste in their day. So once you get down to this 9 box and you have the raise your hand rule, and every hour of every day is important to the company, you feel a lot better about what you're doing. You feel a lot more accountability. You feel a lot more ownership. And it does make for a better workplace. So instead of managing work life balance, you're managing how they feel like they are adding value to the company and how they feel about what they're doing every day, and they get excited to come to work every day and they do well, and then they go home and they feel good about what they did. And so beyond the profit, that's what I say is my employees tend to be happier and they tend to be better. They actually get better at their jobs, and that's a good feeling, and it sets them up for a strong future.
A good feeling indeed. And Mr. Todd, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in its third season, and food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, and music 101 are fourth season, science 101, sex 101 second season, and my baby podcast Law 101, Mental Health 101, and Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So finally, Mr. Todd, for the listeners or viewers who may see their own disorders or flaws as obstacles to success, what is your final message on how to begin the journey of reframing their greatest challenge into their hidden superpower?
Sure, self reflection is the key. So you have to look at your disorder and realize that there are good parts and there are bad parts. You have to separate those, understand what you want to continue to do and what you need to fix for, and come up with a solution for, and then embrace the good parts. And not only that, but make sure you're telling people about these good parts, assuming you're out in the open, because the worst thing we can do as somebody with a disorder is every time we mention it, it's something negative, and then that's all that people have, to think about the disorder. So when I have a great idea, when I think outside the box, when I set a huge goal, when I go hyper focus, when I recognize a pattern, I make sure to talk about how it has something to do with the disorder. People start to associate good things with it, and then they start to replicate that behavior. And that's really what you need to do to be successful with a disorder if you do have one. And if you don't have one, watch those things from other people and learn how to put those things into practice in your own life.
Yes, definitely learn from other people, just like Mr. Todd. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Todd. And can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Absolutely. So, Unfair Advantage by Todd Hagopian, pre order on Amazon right now. Got a couple other books coming out later this year, so keep an eye out for those. And visit me at toddhagopian.com. I don't sell consulting, I have tons of free information on there. Feel free to contact me with your questions. I love talking about this stuff. So, toddhagopian.com. Go ahead and contact me and read all the articles.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Todd Hagopian because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering books to come, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. Todd, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
More to come, people. See you soon.